Darcy and I have been investigating unsolved mysteries, missing persons, and strange phenomena for over 2 years now. At the end of every episode, I've asked Darcy a question from one of our listeners.
And I saw an image right away of a man in a uniform, and then he became a boy. And I did my little thing, had to talk to him, explain to him he didn't belong there. And I was probably up there for half an hour.
Really?
And, yep, at the end of the conversation, because every time I went to leave the room, I couldn't leave the room. So at the end of the conversation, I told him I was done, and I was leaving, and he was leaving too, but he was going his own way, and he was not going to disrupt anyone. So as I go to leave the room, all of a sudden the dog is at the door, standing on the threshold. He will not come into the room. He's looking past me, and he's growling.
Wow.
On the back of my head, neck, body, all stood on end.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, and I'm thinking, I can't leave the room because I was at that point terrified the dog would lunge.
Although these brief segments are available for anyone to stream on our Seeing Dead People website, I thought how captivating they might be when combined to create standalone episodes, especially if I added some comments to help provide context. So, that's what I've done. And now, Radio Sydney presents Seeing Dead People, Episode 28, Listeners' Questions, Omnibus, Number 1. Darcy and I had only ever spoken once before undertaking our first investigation on Seeing Dead People. I have to admit, I was both thrilled and stupefied at her ability to accurately tune into my story and its main players by just listening to me and seeing related photographs, especially since she had no advanced knowledge of the episode's subject matter. Frankly, during that first episode, I had a hard time focusing on my storytelling because I kept being flabbergasted and delighted by Darcy's incredibly apt intuition. When she spoke about feeling the waves around Victor's body as he walked into the sea, the hairs on my neck leapt to attention. I knew, right then and there, that Darcy and Seeing Dead People were very special. During our discussion, Darcy mentioned that she might be able to help Doris find peace and finally cross over to her eternal rest. This prompted our very first listener's question. Can Darcy help someone deceased cross over to the other side? I think you'll agree Darcy's answer provides truly bewitching details as to the method she would use to help poor Doris see that wondrous and mythical light. I want to take you, though, Darcy, to this idea of helping her cross over. If you were to undertake that and you were to go to the golf course, would you be going at this time, roughly time when she passed away? So in the dark, would you be standing there quietly waiting for something to give you a trigger, or would you just start talking to the darkness or the daylight, depending when you're gone?
Well, I don't wait till the time they pass.
Okay.
And I have had a few people I've helped pass over.
Ooh.
What I do is I'll find a space, like I would like to be in the area that I believe they are.
Yeah.
And if I can, I'm there. If I'm not, then I visualize in my head a burning candle. Okay? And I see the flame, and I see it getting bigger and bigger, and I start talking to the person by name, and I'll talk to them, I'll explain that they've died, and that it was, and I'll tell them if it was a violent death. I don't believe lying to them is going to make them any better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell them what I'm feeling about the anguish for themselves, as well as for maybe the way the person was feeling. Like he didn't really want to do it, but he felt compelled. He was at his wit's end. And I would say all this to her, and then I would say that there's people who love her waiting for her on the other side. And that is, I have a candle burning. Sometimes I'll visually light a candle so they can see it, but a lot of times if I can project my image in my head, they can see it, and I tell them, just follow the light. You're going to see the the sky open and you'll see a heavenly light, and I'm not joking, you actually do see that heavenly light.
Oh, neat.
You can go towards it and you'll start seeing the little globes all around it and people coming towards you to take your hand and help you cross. And it doesn't mean she stays there forever. She can come back and visit anytime she wants. It's just that anguish that I feel, that emptiness, the hollowness that I'm feeling gets filled.
Well, are you actually speaking out loud when you're doing this, Darcy, or are you doing this in your head?
It all depends. If I'm by myself, I tend to speak out loud.
Good.
Okay? Because if there's a group of people around me, unless they expect me to do it, okay, then I tend to do it in my head. Unless they expect me to talk out loud, and if people have hired me to, literally I'm performing a funeral.
Okay.
And I invite them, as well as the person who has died, to look to the light, to feel the love that draws them towards it, and allow them to pass.
Wasn't that spellbinding? I hope if I'm ever trapped between the here and now and the hereafter, Darcy will gently and successfully encourage me in the right direction. In our second episode, called The Dapper Spectre of the Empress Hotel, we tackled the famous historical tale of the ongoing haunting of that prestigious Grand Dam on the Victoria Inner Harbour. Darcy quickly and impressively twigged to the relevant love triangle among Francis Rattenbury, his wife Alma, and her young lover George Stoner. In one of many wondrous insights, Darcy somehow knew who struck the hammer blows in 1936 that killed Rattenbury, way before I revealed the actual police evidence about that. Law enforcement directly related to our second listener's question: has Darcy helped the police? As you will hear, despite some officers' attempts to trick her, Darcy has proven herself a number of times with the folks in blue, using her exceptional ability to glean key information, unknown by the rest of us, from photos, articles of personal wear, and of clothing. So today we have a question from a listener named Mary, and she's very keen to know, what sorts of information do the police provide you, Darcy, when they ask you about a case?
Actually, Nicola, the police don't offer me anything. Normally, a family member has asked me to take a look at the case, and then they go to the police, and they ask the police if they're willing to listen.
Oh, okay.
So then I'll go in, and at that point, they'll then give me either a picture, an article of clothing, or like a toy, something that supposedly belongs to the victim.
Okay.
Okay. Or the missing person or something like that. And sometimes they give it to me, and as soon as they hand it to me, I go, really? Really? This is your daughter's? They look at me and go, how do you know that? I'm like, oh, let's see. It's your daughter's.
They're tricking you.
Yes, they will trick you to see whether or not you can actually perform.
Well, I guess that can make sense, from their perspective. They don't want to waste their time or your time, so they're testing you.
They are. And as soon as you're able to prove something to them, and looking for missing people, working on homicide, anything like that, it's not a written science for us. And unfortunately, they can't take that to court. So using us for them here in BC is very, or even in Canada, is very irrelevant because we're not usable.
Okay, so you could just be background information. You can't be legally used as proof.
No. But when I go in, I have conditions, and one, you never use my name.
Oh.
Never.
Okay.
I will never talk about the cases I've worked on. I may tell little anecdotes about a case, okay, but I won't actually tell you what the case is because, one, I don't want my name associated to it. If I won't let the police use my name in the file, then I'm not about to say anything about the case.
Okay.
But I will use little anecdotes. Like I did a case and they played the video. They video copied me in the interview.
Okay.
And they played the video for the victim's brother. And to quote the victim's brother, in brackets, and I don't swear, but he went, "How does she know my family?"
Oh, really?
And when they told me what he said, I went, "I don't know, it's all in the picture."
Well, based on what you are able to glean from these pictures that I send you, and really they're just little digital images. Often they're in black and white and lousy clarity because they're of old historical people and buildings. The energy and the information you get from them is just mind-boggling.
Well, that's what was always one of my Fortune 500 gifts. I could see a picture and see things that most people can't.
Yeah, I can see that.
And yet, I can't paint, draw, but I can do photographs. And so it makes sense that when I look at one, I'm going to see more.
I'm so impressed at Darcy's humility and refusal to accept any recognition for her efforts to assist the police. She's there to help, not to gain favors. On our third episode, The Coal King's Haunted Castle, we focused on Victoria's stunning Craigdarroch mansion. Darcy's quick perception of the compelling and convoluted dynamic of the Dunsmuir family is outstanding. During this conversation, Darcy revealed that bricks and mortar can retain life energies and identified some of the spirits that wander this 25,000 square foot castle and its extensive manicured grounds. This was a perfect jump-off point to our third listener's question. Do houses retain energy? Of course they do, as you'll now hear.
Because there's history, not just with the people who purchased the land and built the house, there's the history of everything that came with it, and energy gets left behind. Just like our own houses, when we buy a house from someone else, there is energy from the people prior to us. Yeah. And so you either flow with the energy, remove it a little bit, and remember to remove yours as you're leaving your premise, so that there's always new energy coming in. But I don't think at that day and time people really understood energy and that they could leave an imprint, because that's basically what it is. They've left their imprint on the premise.
So are you saying we can take our energy with us?
Yes. When you go to leave a house, you can ask the house, let the house know, you talk to it, you tell it you're leaving and that you're going to take the energy. Now, when there's been tragedy or anger or frustration in a house, that's a little harder to take with you.
Okay.
That energy, and that's the kind of energy that gets left behind. Anything tragic, frustrated, anger, that's all the energy left behind. But it doesn't always come across as that. It comes across as sadness. It comes across as disappointment. And sometimes you do feel the anger and the frustration that went with it.
Okay, well then if I'm leaving behind that kind of, let's say, negative energy, does it leave me then? Can I kind of dump it and move on?
No, because it's part of who you are.
Bummer.
If you learn to remove the energy now from yourself, then yes, it can leave you.
Okay, but that would take some training.
It's just an understanding that when you get angry, turn it around. Find something that makes it happy. Okay, it's like stubbing your toe in the morning. When you stub your toe in the morning, and if you start doing that little swear and dance on the spot routine and,
yep,
everything that goes with it, pay attention to the rest of your day. It's going to be like that. But if you get up, stub your toe, and take a few minutes, do your little dance of pain, and then say, okay, this is all you're going to get from me today, because now I'm going to have a good day.
Oh, I see. Okay, and you put it in its place.
Yeah.
Okay. I visited Craigdarroch Castle and was blown away by its architectural splendor. Sadly, I felt no ethereal energies, but I hope to visit again, this time with Darcy, and perhaps some of her otherworldly intuition will rub off, and I'll experience a hair-raising shiver or two. Our fourth episode on Seeing Dead People also delved into another famous Victoria landmark as we explored the ongoing haunting by the Dunsmuirs of Hatley Park. You may have seen this incredible Edwardian mansion on the big screen, as it has been the set for many box office bonanzas like the X-Men series. Though impressed by the gorgeous building, Darcy was immediately drawn outside to the stately grounds and somehow heard and saw Boy Dunsmuir as he galloped by on his dappled grey thoroughbred. Our fourth listener's question this time targeted something I also wanted to ask Darcy. Our fourth listener's question this time targeted something I've always wanted to ask Darcy. Is she ever scared when dealing with supernatural entities? Her two-part answer about meeting evil is revelatory and chilling, and will make you rethink the power of salt. Thank you. So now we get the eagerly anticipated glimpse into your personal psychic process. I get to ask a listener's question.
All right.
Today, we have a question from Dan. He really wanted to know, have you ever, and you mentioned this a little bit in our last episode, but I would like to pull it out to you. Have you ever been really terrified yourself, having an experience with some kind of supernatural entity?
Yes. Several times that I can remember, but I think the last one was 7 years ago.
Okay.
And a friend of mine said that her daughter, and my friend is intuitive as well, she said her daughter's son, who was 3, was having a problem with an entity in their bedroom, in his bedroom. Okay? And that it was like, he said it was like a child or a man at the time that would come into his room and try to play with him or jump out of the closet at him or under the bed. And they asked me if I would go and have a look.
Okay.
Okay, and of course, when they're telling me the story, I heard a voice inside my head said, yeah, right. Okay, and I ignored the voice and I said, yeah, I'll go look. So I tootled over to their place. It was a Friday night after work, and I wasn't expecting really to see much. Now, I should have known better because it was an army barracks redone.
Ah.
They changed the army barracks into townhouses.
Okay.
And they had this dog. Oh, he must have been a cross between a St. Bernard and, say, an Irish wolfhound, because he was huge.
Okay.
I have 36-inch inseam,
all
right? His head came up to my hip.
Oh, wow. And they have a little 3-year-old boy?
And a 7-year-old daughter.
Okay.
And this dog just loved them.
Right.
Okay. So when I walked in the house, the first thing my friend's daughter noted was the dog didn't growl at me. She went, that's unusual. He growls at everyone. And I thought, okay. And then she took me up the stairs to the boy's bedroom, and I actually hesitated crossing the threshold. So I made her go downstairs, pick up a couple of things for me, and bring them up before I would cross the threshold. And, of course, stupid me, I put my phone down on the side table and purse down when I walked in the house. So I said to her, you go on outside with the kids and let me deal with this. And so I walked across the threshold. The lights were on. They shut off when I walked across. And I closed my eyes and I went, this is not funny. And I turned the lights back on, and I saw an image right away of a man in a uniform. And then he became a boy. And I did my little thing, had to talk to him, explain to him he didn't belong there. And I was probably up there for half an hour.
Really?
And, yep, at the end of the conversation, because every time I went to leave the room, I couldn't leave the room. So at the end of the conversation, I told him I was done, and I was leaving, and he was leaving too, but he was going his own way, and he was not going to disrupt anyone. So as I go to leave the room, all of a sudden the dog is at the door, standing on the threshold. He will not come into the room. He's looking past me and he's growling.
Wow.
On the back of my head, neck, body all stood on end.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, and I'm thinking, I can't leave the room because I was at that point terrified the dog would lunge, and I knew it wasn't at me. And I had to stand there for another 15 minutes till my friend's daughter came into the house and said, "Hey, Darcy, are you done yet?" And I went, "You need to get your dog." And as soon as I walked out of the room, the dog sat down, rolled over on his back, and let me rub his stomach.
Well, so let me just unpack that a little bit. First and foremost, when you came up towards the threshold, you immediately knew you didn't want to go past it. What were you thinking or seeing or feeling?
I was feeling darkness, like a big pit, and I was going to fall into it.
If you crossed the threshold?
Yes.
Ooh. And then you said you asked them to go downstairs and get a couple of things. What did they get for you?
I had her grab a sage stick out of my purse, salt out of the kitchen, and something to put the sage in, and a candle and a lighter.
Okay, so you have sage and a container, a candle and a lighter, and something else from the kitchen. What was that?
Salt.
Oh, salt. Oh, okay. All right. And then what, did you just grit your teeth and step across?
Basically, grit my teeth, step across, have the light go out, and then after they're back on, light the sage the room, bring the entity closer to the center, put salt around the circle where he's standing and telling him he can't ever leave that the only way he can leave is to move into universe. And then leave the salt trail all the way out the house so that basically he could follow me out of the house, but he couldn't leave the circle. He couldn't stay in that room anymore.
And when you were talking to him, was he responding in any way?
Yeah, he was just angry.
Okay, so when you're saying you're having a conversation, really it's a one-way conversation?
Well, yes and no. It's a one-way verbally.
Okay.
And I can hear him in my head. So, but all he was angry. You could feel the essence of his anger.
Did you get a sense of why he was so angry?
Well, he felt it was his house and no one belonged in it but him.
Oh, okay.
Now, he did come out with me. And when I went to get in my car, I basically told him, "You're not allowed to follow me home, that your universe is now out here."
Okay.
And that night when I went to bed, I actually couldn't shut off the light. I couldn't go to sleep because I still could feel the presence of the evil. It's the only way to describe it.
Wow.
Evil feeling. And then finally, I laid on the floor and I had a sheet over me because I felt less exposed on the floor.
Yeah, okay.
My eyes were closed, and all of a sudden, it was someone had picked up the sheet, and it was doing that, where you put someone in the center of a blanket or sheet, and you toss them up and down.
Yeah.
And that was going on, and then the sheet fluttered down on top of me. I sat up, and I went, "That's it. Get out of here." And we're gone.
Wow, you're pretty brave.
No, I was pretty scared.
Wow. I'm going to take you back to the room. You said the dog came to the threshold and growled. Were you afraid the dog would come in and attack you?
Yeah, because the entity was beside me.
Right. So the dog wouldn't be able to distinguish where the evil was coming from, and you were obviously a live, breathing flesh entity that he could attack.
Yes. Thing is, once the entity was confined in the salt, it changes the energy and the molecule of the entity. Salt is a purification. Okay, so after that experience, I'm not sure whether I would hug or hide from that ready-to-spring canine. We moved across the country for our next Seeing Dead People investigation, looking into another beautiful and bedeviled building in Episode 5, titled, Who Haunts Toronto's Old City Hall? This is one of my favorite episodes. I had chills throughout, and when Darcy relayed some of the last thoughts of convicted murderer Arthur Lucas, I actually stopped breathing. How did she know? I had a similar experience listening to Darcy's next answer to a listener's question, which is actually continuing from number 4. This one asks, how does Darcy remove an entity? So when you're encountering this entity and you're going to put the salt around the entity,
You said you drew it to the middle of the room somehow.
Yeah, I don't know how I do that. I just know I tell them where to be.
And they follow suit.
Yeah.
And then you're able to literally pour salt around them as they are there.
And then I collect it, and I basically do a salt trail out of the house. So at the end of the day, the girl who owned the house would have to vacuum all that up.
Right.
I have heard since that the boy's good. There's been no incidences since then. And like I said, I think that was about 5 to 7 years ago.
Wow, way to go, Darcy. So when you came out of the room and you had that entity trapped in the salt trail with you and you greeted the dog, the entity was no longer a threat to the dog?
Nope, not a threat to the dog at all then.
But it was still there?
It was still there. It was in the little container that I had her bring up to me, because the salt originally is in the container. So she'll take the container, put the salt in it, and then I'll use that container. And then what I do is I take it home, and I normally flush it down the toilet.
Okay. Out into the sea goes the entity.
Yes, but if I'm close to a water source, like an ocean or a lake or a creek or something like that, I can do it there as well. But then what I do, if it's fresh water, I just dig a little hole and bring the fresh water over to the hole and put the salt in and then the water.
Wow. So I just want to make sure I get this because it's so interesting. When you're in the room and you got the entity to come into some area where you can then encircle it in salt, then how do you get the entity from being encircled in salt into this little container?
I just sweep up the salt because that's what my granny taught me.
You sweep up the salt, and by doing so, you're sweeping up the molecules of the entity itself and putting it into the little container?
Oh, that's how my grandma taught me. So to me, that's how it works.
But it works for you.
It does. I mean, other people have, like, if you've ever seen Ghostbusters, they have a container that they suck it into.
Yep.
There are times where you can just go around the room and move the entity to an opening and push them out the opening. I like the salt because the salt is purification.
Right. Okay, so then you can get the entity with the salt. You're using a little sweeper to literally sweep it up?
Oh, yeah, I carry a little broom set, like a little whisk and dustpan.
Right.
When I know I'm going out to work, I normally have all my paraphernalia with me.
Okay, so you've got your Ghostbusters gear bag.
Basically.
Wow. So you swept this horrible entity into this little container, and then you take that container with you, you're holding on to it, and you're still trailing salt?
Yeah, just a little salt, but I have already put the salt in my hand.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is just making sure that I'm not leaving any residue behind me.
Okay, and so you're not necessarily making a little Hansel and Gretel trail of salt.
No, it's to make sure you're not leaving any residue.
Right.
And everyone does it different.
Oh, okay. That's fascinating.
Everyone does it different. My brother does it different than me. He may feel that the entity doesn't have to leave, that he just needs to have a talk to it. I do believe there are some entities that need to stay where they are because that's where they feel safe.
Okay, but this one you felt when you said the word evil, and I'm sure you don't use that word lightly.
No, I don't, but there was just something about him that I felt he didn't belong in the room he was in, and better to take him out. And it turned out that he wasn't just visiting this little boy. There were several little boys on the block that he was visiting. So at the end of the day, it stopped him from visiting any of them.
Thank goodness. So like he was some really mean bully.
He could have been, or he could have just been, the ice cream man.
You mean he was going to take advantage of the little ones?
Well, that's the ice cream man.
Yeah, that's the ice cream man, exactly. Wow. Well, way to go, Darcy. That's fascinating. Thank you for that. I hope you don't mind us prying into your actual procedures.
No, because every time it's different. I never use probably the same procedure twice.
Oh, great. Cool. I bet you're just as amazed as I am by what Darcy takes with her when she's doing her ghost-busting routine. Seeing Dead People remained in the Big Smoke for episode 6, where we investigated death in the infamous spirit-ridden Dawn Jail. This show is a continuation of episode 5, and for me, just as exceptional, as Darcy rocked my socks by calmly asking if our subjects were the last 2 men hanged in Canada. They were. How on earth did Darcy twig to that? I don't think there's a listener's question that can solicit an understandable answer to us non-intuitives to that question. We did, however, draw just as captivating information from Darcy when we asked the following listener's question. Has Darcy performed exorcisms?
Would an exorcism remove ghosts that weren't harmful?
They can do all of that.
Oh, they can.
Yeah, harmful ones, unharmful. But sometimes when you're doing an exorcism, it's really important that you specify what you're trying to get rid of.
Have you been involved in something like that?
Oh, I've done it once.
Can you tell us a little about it?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, but when you're actually doing that, you can, in your mind as you're doing it, choose the spirit you want to leave?
You have to do it out loud.
Oh, okay. Sorry, if you say it out loud, but you're choosing to stipulate an individual specific spirit that you want gone.
Yes.
Could you ask for more than one to go?
You could if there is more than one that needs to be taken away. But normally when you do an exorcism, you're looking to remove something evil.
Yeah, that's what I sort of think of it as. Not some fun little ghost that might pop up now and again, but something that's really evil.
Yes. It's really out there causing such a disturbance that you don't know which way you're going in.
Right.
I've seen the movie The Exorcist and was disturbed and petrified. So I admit I wouldn't be too keen to go toe-to-toe with a demon. But I hope I would have the courage to buck myself up and help Darcy if she ever called upon me as a ghostbuster. Our next episode brought us back to a familiar horror trope, the old haunted castle. This time we explored Toronto's 65,000 square foot Disney wannabe palace called Casaloma. This gorgeous location is ideal for paranormal shenanigans. Darcy discovered plenty, and she also instantly and correctly identified the tunnel as the most haunted area of the castle and knew that neither of the original owners died in their beloved abode. The listener's question following this episode offered a deeper glimpse into Darcy's special world. What's the difference between psychics and mediums?
Being psychic versus being a medium? How can you be one and not the other, or how can you be both?
Okay, well, what it comes down to is most people are psychic. We're all born this way. It's whether or not we choose to listen. And I actually called myself psychic because at the time it was easier to explain to people I'm psychic. Until the show Medium came out, a lot of people didn't understand what a medium was.
Okay.
And the truth is, I didn't understand what a medium was. I thought everyone could see dead people. And it wasn't until I made a few friends that are psychic. They don't lay claim to being intuitive, but psychic people can hear dead as well. They can see dead. It's just that the medium will strictly work normally with people who have passed, messages from dead, deceased loved ones. A psychic works at looking into your future, your past, present, and future to give you insights into things that might be happening around you. Myself as a psychic medium, I do it all. I can talk to the dead. I can give you an idea of what your future is like, and a lot of time it's the dead people telling me what to say to you. Because there's no way that I would ever say to someone, unless I knew them personally, you need to build a fire under your ass to get moving, buddy. I would never say that to someone I didn't know. So to me, when I'm giving those messages, they're coming from the people who died.
Oh, okay.
So you can be both, or you can choose to be one, basically.
So one is kind of not necessarily just in the past, but mostly in the past. That's the medium. And the other is looking forward. That's the psychic.
Yeah, looking present and forward. But as a medium, a psychic medium, I do it all. I look to the past, I look in the present, and then I look to your future.
Right. Cool.
And it's just a terminology.
Well, it's a pretty remarkable talent to have, Darcy, and I'm glad we know it.
Well, I'm actually glad I have it. It's a choice that I'm glad I decided to embrace instead of keep running away from.
Good. I'm sure it took a lot of courage to do just that.
It did.
Okay, well, thanks, Darcy.
I'm amazed that Darcy actually once thought everyone could see dead people. I sure can't, nor can I talk to the deceased, nor relay their messages. Honestly, as fascinating and cool as those talents are, I'm not sure if I'd want them. A bit too chicken, I guess. A new twist emerged on seeing dead people in episode 9, as we expanded our areas of exploration to include historical true crimes. We immediately tackled one of the most infamous cold cases in U.S. history, the tragic, still unsolved 1956 murders of teens Barbara and Patricia Grimes. I called this episode Chicago's Lost Bobby Soxers. Darcy was in top form, quickly revealing that the young girls were taken by someone known to the family, that they did not die immediately, and tragically both were raped, most of which was eventually suspected or confirmed by police. Our 8th listener's question took us to both the past and the future when Darcy answered Tom's question. Does Darcy have premonitions?
Now, before I let you go then, I've got our very popular listener's question for you this week.
All right.
This query comes from Tom, who wants to know if you have premonitions. And he says, if so, Darcy, is this typical of other psychics to be able to see both the past and the future?
Okay, I'll answer that one first. The part about is it normal or typical?
Okay.
Psychics to have both past and present. And the answer is actually no. Okay. Sometimes some psychics and mediums or intuitive people just see the future or right now. Now, are we all capable of having premonitions from the past? Absolutely. Think of deja vu. But not all psychics or mediums can see the future, like the premonition of something that's going to happen.
Okay.
Now, to use an example, 9/11. Okay?
Yep.
We're all familiar with it. Well, up to a week before it happened, I was having dreams of people falling out of a burning building, and I told my friends about it. And I went, like, what is this about? I could smell the smoke, I could hear the screams, and I could hear the fear. And a friend who's a police officer in Ontario phoned me and said, because she's up way before I am.
Yep.
And he goes, have you seen the news? And I went, no. And she goes, go downstairs. And so I went, trooped downstairs and turned on my TV, and there it was. People jumping out of windows in the smoke. I went, oh, that's what that was. And she went, doesn't it affect you? And I went, no, now I have my answer. And so, yeah, occasionally I see premonitions, but I have no idea what they mean.
But is it not unbelievably frustrating that you have a premonition for an event you can do nothing about, and then have the event happen and not have been able to do anything to stop it or improve on it?
Well, here's why. Because most people don't believe us.
Right.
Okay? So telling someone that is like opening a can of worms to have them pick you up and question you.
Right, I get it.
Okay? And yes, it is frustrating when you can't stop something because you don't actually know what you're trying to stop, because when they only show you a burning building and people falling and smoke, And it's like, okay, that could be anywhere. I lived in a townhouse, 2 stories, and I thought, okay, I made sure all the burners were off and everything every night.
So why do you think then we'll use you as the example, you get these specific scenes? So they're not enough to tell you where it's happening. They're not enough to tell you when it's happening or actually what is happening. But you could have been given other scenes that might have given you more clues. Why do you think it's just random, or how does that happen?
I think sometimes you're supposed to know to prepare yourself, because a lot of people fell apart that day, and there had to be people that were still strong throughout it.
Okay, so you're saying you're forewarned just so that you can be one of the people who can bear the tragedy.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a different way of looking at it. I would never have thought of that.
Well, the reason I say it is because my daughter saw that, and she just looked at it once and started crying. My friend was crying. And it's like, well, who's going to see the rationale behind this?
Right, and when you say your daughter saw it, she saw it live.
Yeah, she was watching the news too, and she just broke into tears.
Yeah, like pretty well everybody else in the world, perhaps, except for the few psychics like yourself who were seeing the premonitions.
Well, yeah, and there were more of us that saw it but could not put it together.
Right. Huh. I guess that's something you got to learn to live with.
Yeah, you definitely have to. And you think of the kids that were drawing pictures of it.
Were there kids that drawing pictures of it?
Yep.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's cool. So they're younger kids having premonitions.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone can have a premonition, even you.
I'll hold you to that.
Let me do this. Have you ever gotten into your car and thought, I think I need to go back in the house for a minute, but I forgot something?
Well, I've forgotten things, but I know I've forgotten something.
Yeah, but normally you just drive away. Okay? But you get out of your car and you go back into your house. That is a premonition that something's wrong and you're preventing something from happening.
Well, I guess that's true. I tend to think premonitions are, giving you information far more in advance, than it's happening. But you're saying within seconds.
And there.
Well, that's fair. I mean, that's a fair definition. I would agree with you that you could say a premonition can be seconds ahead, or like you. When did you start dreaming of 9/11?
2 weeks.
Okay.
Before.
Okay, I had not thought of premonitions being that short-lived, so to speak.
Okay, I'll give you another one for a premonition. During the war, and the mother would hear a phone call, and next thing you know, there would be a telegram telling her son was dead, and she already knew it.
Yeah, you do hear those stories, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, that's not uncommon, that's for sure. But would you say those people aren't automatically psychic, because not everybody is psychic, and yet many people get premonitions? So that kind of goes back to Tom's question. Is it typical for people to have premonitions, or are they more psychic in order to get premonitions?
Everyone is born intuitive. It's whether they choose to listen. And anyone, whether you're psychic or not, can have a premonition.
Okay, that's a good, straight answer. Thanks.
Okay.
Man, it must be so frustrating to be given glimpses of what might happen, but not enough information to do anything constructive about it. At least, as Darcy said, she and others would be somewhat prepared for what was to come. For our 9th episode, we traveled even farther, all the way down under, to investigate one of Australia's greatest unsolved mysteries, the identity of the dead man found on Somerton Beach in 1948. As sometimes happens, Darcy disagreed with the official version and provided a different, yet compelling and logical solution to this bizarre case. Her remarkable and accurate insights included knowing the man had either been a dancer or an athlete, and that he was looking for a woman who lived a mere 500 yards from where he was found. How she knew that, I'll never know. That discussion led us perfectly into our 9th listener's question. which was, do dead people seek Darcy's help? Well, I'll just hang on to you for a few more minutes just to ask you our listener's question.
All right.
This week is a kind of a different one. It comes at your psychic talents from another angle. Bryn wants to know if dead people ever seek you out for help. You know, just out of the blue, showing up without any preamble?
Yes, they do. And not just people who have been murdered. I actually have dreams dealing with dead people that are moving on to a new life, and they want to know where they're going and what their choices are.
Oh, okay.
So I may do readings for live people, but I also do readings for people who are already deceased.
That's a real mind twister.
Tell me about it. But in all the cases I've ever worked with, I think there's only been 2 where the victims have literally come forward and asked me to talk on their behalf, and it's normally if I come across the picture of theirs, and I fight it. I fight tooth and nail not to actually pick up the phone and go through the rigmarole the police will put me through to tell them what I'm seeing.
Really?
Yeah. Because every time I talk to a new police department or a new police officer, I have to prove myself.
Yeah, that must get very tiresome very soon.
And it does. So normally, if I've already worked with someone, I will phone them and ask them to present me so I don't have to justify who I am.
Right. They can initiate it.
Yeah.
And it's like they give you your bona fides, as they say.
That's just it. They don't.
Yeah, you want them to, though.
I can see how many times already that I've had them do that finger and go, ooh, like that to me.
You're kidding. That's very dismissive.
Yes, it is.
Well, I guess you wouldn't be working for them then.
Nope. So then I'll get hold of the family if I'm able to.
Oh, okay.
And I'll give them the information.
That's good of you.
So then it's up to them. They can take it. I don't ask for anything. I just give them the information.
Wow. Well, have you ever sort of turned away from someone who was dead and said, like, I don't want to deal with you?
No, I don't think I have. I'm not very good at saying no. You need to read the book again that says what part of it, no, don't you understand?
Okay, well, thank you for not saying no to us this evening. Wow. I've never heard of anyone doing readings for dead people, much less having the deceased co-opt your dreams for their personal needs. That's just freaking unworldly and slightly alarming. Even though it's so unusual, I also sympathize with Darcy's frustration with always having to prove her psychic abilities over and over again. That's just such a typical human reaction, but as a result of a very atypical ability. As I keep saying, Darcy's aptitudes are totally big-time cool. Well, that's the end of my omnibus of the first 9 questions that Seeing Dead People listeners have posed to Darcy. I hope you found the questions and Darcy's answers as riveting and intriguing as I have. We have many more, and of course add new ones with each monthly episode. So please check them out on our website, or keep watch for my second omnibus of listeners' questions on a future Seeing Dead People podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If a question or 3 have popped into your head while hearing this episode, please consider sending them along to us at info@radiosydney.ca. Fortunately, Darcy's always game to let others into her intuitive processes, and I'm always thrilled to be along for our unique and spellbinding psychic ride on Seeing Dead People, heard every weekend on radiosydney.ca.
Thank you for listening to Seeing Dead People, where goosebumps are guaranteed. All episodes are available as downloadable podcasts at our website or on our YouTube channel, Nicola Furlong Mysteries. I'm Dorian Mortis, weirdly keen on seeing dead people. This has been a presentation of Radio Sydney.